Get the specialist now! He's seizing! The doctor's frantic shouts tore through the lavish medical suite in Ethan Warwick's Austin mansion, where the billionaire's body convulsed, his breath ragged against the wail of monitors. 10 of the world's sharpest medical minds faltered, their tests useless against an unseen poison gnawing at his life. A sinister force cloaked in betrayal. In the suffocating chaos, a single quiet act of defiance would ignite a truth no one dared imagine. A woman's unwavering heart would unravel a deadly conspiracy, proving salvation burns brighter than science's cold logic. This tale will seize your soul, so smash that subscribe button and share where you're watching. Dawn's glow or city's pulse. Stay riveted, for the love that could save or shatter Ethan will expose a darkness that changes everything. Get the specialists, now! He's seizing! The shout shattered the sterile calm of Ethan Warwick's private medical suite, a fortress of gleaming chrome and soft white linens tucked within his sprawling Austin mansion. The billionaire's body convulsed on the polished floor, his golden hair damp with sweat, his once chiseled face twisted in agony. Monitors screamed in protest, their jagged lines painting a frantic portrait of a body betraying its master. 10 of the nation's finest doctors crowded the room, their lab coats a blur of white against the mahogany-paneled walls, but their expertise faltered against an invisible enemy, a poison weaving its silent havoc through Ethan's veins, orchestrated by a betrayal no one suspected. The mansion, perched on a bluff overlooking the Colorado River, was a monument to Ethan's empire in biotech, its glass walls reflecting the fiery Texas sunset like a beacon of untouchable wealth. At 35, Ethan Warwick was the picture of success. Tall, strikingly handsome, his blonde hair catching the light like spun gold, his green eyes sharp enough to command boardrooms. But today, those eyes were clouded, his hands trembling as he gripped the armrests of his medical bed before the seizure stole his strength. For months, he'd been wasting away. Feverish nights, unexplained weight loss, a fatigue that clung like damp earth. The best minds in medicine, summoned at astronomical cost, stood helpless, their charts and scans offering no answers. No tumors, no infections, Dr. Helen Carter, a silver-haired neurologist, muttered, her voice tight with frustration. His white cell count fluctuates like a storm front, but there's no pattern. It's as if his body is fighting something we can't see. Ethan's breaths came in shallow gasps as the seizure ebbed, his chest heaving under the crisp white shirt that clung to his sweat-soaked skin. The doctors exchanged glances, their confidence unraveling. They'd come from Johns Hopkins, Stanford, Mayo, each a titan in their field, yet this illness mocked them. Was it autoimmune, neurological, a rare genetic defect? The room buzzed with their theories, but none could name the shadow consuming Ethan Warwick. And beneath it all, a darker truth lurked. Claire, the cunning wife of Ethan's feckless younger brother Ryan, had been slipping a rare toxin into his water for months. A slow, insidious poison designed to mimic a wasting disease, to paralyze and eventually kill, all while cloaking her greed for his fortune. Downstairs in the mansion's gleaming industrial kitchen, Maya Johnson moved with the quiet grace of a conductor, her long black hair cascading in soft waves when not tied back for work. At 28, she was a vision of calm amid chaos, her dark skin glowing under the warm lights as she stirred a pot of rosemary-infused broth. A chef of rare talent, Maya ran the kitchen with an intelligence that saw through pretense and a composure that never wavered, even when orders piled up for Ethan's endless stream of medical staff. Her grandmother, a folk healer from Louisiana's bayous, had taught her to read the world's hidden signs, the way a person's shoulders slumped under grief, the faint scent of sickness no machine could detect. As she chopped fresh thyme, Maya's thoughts drifted to Ethan. She'd noticed the untouched trays of food returned from his suite, the way his hands shook when he reached for his morning coffee, the faint, acrid smell that lingered around him. Not cologne, but something deeper, darker, like the soul sickness her grandmother once described. Maya had been with the Warwick household for 2 years, her presence as unassuming as the polished silver she cleaned after meals. To Ethan, she was just the chef, a shadow who ensured his table was flawless. But Maya saw him, really saw him. She knew he took his coffee black at dawn, that he worked until the stars lit the Austin sky, that he kept a small wooden boat, a toy, hidden in his desk drawer. It was Liam's, she'd guessed, his adopted son, lost 3 years ago in a boating accident on Lake Travis. The tragedy had carved a hollow in Ethan's eyes, a grief he buried under his empire's relentless grind. And lately she'd noticed something else. A woman, Claire, lingering too long near Ethan's suite, her smile too sharp, her hands too quick to offer him a glass of water. Claire, with her sleek blonde bob and designer dresses, was Ryan's wife, a woman whose charm masked a ravenous ambition. Ryan, Ethan's younger brother, was a man of squandered potential, living off his brother's generosity while scheming for more. Together, they coveted Ethan's billions, and Claire had found her weapon, a rare neurotoxin procured through Ryan's shady contacts, tasteless and nearly undetectable. Each dose she slipped into Ethan's water deepened his decline, her plan to inherit his fortune inching closer with every labored breath he took. Today, as the doctor scrambled, Claire stood in the corner of the suite, her face a mask of false concern, her heart racing with triumph. The seizure was proof her plan was working, Ethan was crumbling, and no one suspected her. Maya, wiping her hands on her apron, paused as she overheard the commotion upstairs. The mansion staff whispered in hushed tones, "Mr. Warwick's worse. They don't know what's wrong." Her pulse quickened, not with panic, but with a strange certainty. The kind her grandmother called the knowing. She'd smelled it before, the sharp metallic tang around Ethan. Not just grief, but something chemical. Wrong. As she plated a bowl of her special broth, infused with herbs her grandmother swore could calm a troubled spirit, Maya scribbled a note. "Eat this, Mr. Warwick. Your body needs to speak." She handed the tray to a staff member, her calm exterior hiding a storm of suspicion. Claire's frequent visits, the way Ethan's symptoms flared after her kind offerings. It wasn't just grief. Something or someone was killing him. In the suite, Ethan stirred, his vision blurry as the doctor stabilized him. His throat burned, his limbs felt like lead, but through the haze he remembered the tray of food from earlier that week. A bowl of soup that had, for a fleeting moment, eased the weight in his chest. He didn't know why, but the memory of it lingered, a lifeline in the fog of his pain. The doctors argued over new scans, new drugs, their voices a cacophony of failure. Claire slipped out, her heels clicking on the marble floor, her mind already plotting the next dose. And in the kitchen below, Maya stood still, her dark eyes narrowing as she resolved to watch closer, to listen to the signs her grandmother taught her to trust. The mansion held secrets. Secrets of poison, betrayal, and a grief so deep it could kill. And Maya Johnson, with her steady hands and unyielding heart, was about to step into a battle she didn't yet fully understand. The kitchen of Ethan Warwick's Austin mansion thrummed with controlled chaos, a symphony of sizzling pans and clinking knives under the warm glow of pendant lights. Maya Johnson stood at the heart of it, her long black hair cascading in glossy waves, freed from its usual bun as she leaned over a pot of simmering broth. At 28, she was a portrait of calm, her dark eyes sharp with focus, her movements precise even as servers rushed around her. The air carried the scent of rosemary and thyme, but beneath it, Maya caught a whiff of something else, something acrid, unnatural, like the faint trace of poison her grandmother had once taught her to detect in a sick man's breath. Her hands stilled on the ladle, her mind racing back to Ethan's untouched trays, his trembling fingers, the way his vibrant frame seemed to wither with each passing day. Maya's grandmother, a folk healer from Louisiana's bayous, had gifted her more than recipes for gumbo and cornbread. "The body speaks, Cher," she'd said, her voice rough as river rocks. "Doctors listen with machines, but you listen with your soul." Maya had learned to read the signs, grief in the slump of shoulders, fear in the flicker of eyes, and now in Ethan, a scent that whispered of something darker than sorrow. For weeks, she'd watched him, the billionaire who built an empire saving lives with biotech, yet couldn't save himself. His adopted son, Liam, lost 3 years ago in a boating accident, haunted his silences. But this smell, this slow decay, wasn't just grief, it was betrayal. And Maya's intuition pointed to one person, Claire. Claire Warwick, with her polished blonde bob and eyes like chipped ice, glided through the mansion like a predator in silk. Married to Ryan, Ethan's feckless younger brother, she wore her ambition like perfume, sharp and inescapable. Ryan was a shadow of Ethan, squandering opportunities while living off his brother's wealth. But Claire was the mastermind, her gaze fixed on the billions Ethan commanded. She'd found her weapon months ago, a rare neurotoxin slipped into Ethan's water with the precision of a snake's strike. It mimicked a wasting disease, sapping his strength, clouding his mind, paving the way for paralysis and death. Each dose brought her closer to the fortune she and Ryan craved, and no one, not the 10 specialists poring over Ethan's charts, not the staff bustling through the mansion, suspected her hand in his decline. Today, as Maya chopped fresh sage, she overheard the staff's whispers. Ethan had barely spoken since last night's seizure, his condition worsening. She'd sent up a bowl of her grandmother's broth yesterday, infused with herbs to soothe a troubled spirit, hoping it might ease the weight she saw in his eyes. The tray had returned untouched, but a server mentioned Ethan had read her note. "Eat this, Mr. Warwick. Your body needs to speak," and kept it by his bedside. Maya's heart quickened. He'd noticed her, even if just for a moment. But her thoughts snapped back to Claire, who'd been seen slipping into Ethan's suite that morning, a glass of water in hand, her smile too tight to be genuine. Claire's presence in the mansion had become a constant, her visits to Ethan's private medical suite timed when the doctors were distracted or the nurses on break. Maya had caught her once, hovering by Ethan's bedside, her fingers lingering on a water pitcher. "Just checking on my brother-in-law," Claire had said, her voice honeyed but her eyes hard. Now, as Maya stirred her broth, she noticed Claire descending the grand staircase, her heels clicking like a metronome of malice. The staff parted for her, their deference masking unease. Claire paused at the kitchen's edge, her gaze locking onto Maya. "You're wasting your time with those fancy soups," she said, her tone laced with venom. "Ethan's too sick for your little kitchen tricks." Maya met her stare, her calm unshaken. "Food can heal more than you think, Mrs. Warwick." The jab landed, and Claire's lips thinned. She'd heard the rumors Maya sparked among the staff, that the chef was too attentive to Ethan, too bold for her station. Claire had fanned those flames, whispering to the house manager that Maya was angling for favor, perhaps even money. It was a distraction, a way to keep Maya at bay while Claire's poison worked its slow, silent magic. But Maya's composure unnerved her. The chef's dark eyes seemed to see too much, her quiet confidence a threat Claire hadn't anticipated. "Stay in your lane, Maya," Claire hissed before turning away, her fingers brushing the vial hidden in her purse. Upstairs, Ethan lay in his medical bed, the sterile hum of monitors a cruel reminder of his fragility. His blonde hair clung to his forehead, his once vibrant frame gaunt under the crisp sheets. The doctors had stabilized him after the seizure, but their theories, autoimmune disorders, rare infections, felt like grasping at shadows. Ethan's mind drifted to the wooden boat in his desk drawer, Liam's favorite toy, a relic of the boy he'd raised as his own. The grief was a blade, but the sickness was something else, something that gnawed deeper. He remembered Maya's note, her careful handwriting, and the faint comfort of her broth's aroma. It was the first thing in weeks that hadn't felt like a lie. Maya, wiping her hands on her apron, made a decision. She poured a fresh bowl of broth, this time adding a pinch of her grandmother's blend, celandine and lavender, meant to clear the mind and body. She scribbled another note. "Trust what your body tells you, Mr. Warwick." As she handed the tray to a server, her eyes flicked to the staircase where Claire had vanished. The smell of poison lingered in her memory, sharper now, more certain. Maya's heart pounded, not with fear, but with resolve. Claire was hiding something, and Ethan was running out of time. The mansion's opulent walls held secrets, secrets of greed, of grief, of a poison disguised as care. And Maya Johnson, with her steady hands and unerring intuition, was beginning to hear the truth no one else could. The private medical suite in Ethan Warwick's Austin mansion pulsed with the cold rhythm of monitors. their beeping a relentless reminder of the billionaire's fraying life. Moonlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting silver shadows across the marble floor, where Ethan lay propped against pillows, his blonde hair disheveled, his green eyes dull with exhaustion. At 35, he was a ghost of the commanding figure who'd built a biotech empire, his body now a battleground for a poison none suspected. Claire's neurotoxin slipped into his water with surgical precision, gnawing at his strength. The doctors had left for the night, their theories of rare diseases and genetic anomalies trailing behind like unanswered prayers. Ethan clutched the edge of his blanket, his hands trembling, when a soft knock broke the silence. Maya Johnson stood in the doorway, a tray of steaming food in her hands, her long black hair cascading like a midnight river. Maya, at 28, moved with the quiet authority of someone who'd mastered chaos, her dark skin glowing faintly under the sweet, soft lights. Her presence was a stark contrast to the sterile room, her warmth cutting through its clinical chill. She'd brought a late-night meal, her grandmother's recipe for roasted vegetable soup, infused with herbs meant to soothe a troubled spirit. Her dark eyes, sharp with intuition, scanned Ethan's face, noting the gray pallor, the way his fingers twitched against the sheets. "Mr. Warwick," she said, her voice steady but gentle, "you need to eat. Your body's trying to tell you something." Ethan's gaze lifted, meeting hers for the first time, not as the chef who faded into the mansion's background, but as a woman who saw him, truly saw him. He managed a weak nod, his throat too raw to protest. Maya set the tray on the bedside table, her movements deliberate, her calm unshaken even as her mind raced. She'd smelled it again, that acrid chemical tang clinging to Ethan, stronger now, like a warning carved in the air. Her grandmother's voice echoed, "Poison has a scent, Cher, sharp as betrayal." Maya had watched Claire all day, the way she lingered near Ethan's water pitcher, her smile a mask for something venomous. Claire, married to Ethan's feckless brother Ryan, was a predator cloaked in elegance, her ambition for Ethan's billions driving her to poison him with a toxin that mimicked a wasting disease. Each dose pushed Ethan closer to paralysis, to death, while she and Ryan plotted to inherit his empire. "I don't have much appetite," Ethan rasped, his voice a shadow of its former strength. He gestured to the tray, but his eyes lingered on Maya, searching for something he couldn't name. "Your note yesterday. It said my body needs to speak. What does that mean?" Maya hesitated, her heart pounding, but her composure held like steel. She knelt beside his bed, her hair brushing her shoulders as she met his gaze. "Sometimes, Mr. Warwick, the body carries pain the mind won't face, like losing someone you love." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Like Liam." The name struck Ethan like a blade, his breath catching. Liam, his adopted son, gone 3 years in a boating accident on Lake Travis, his laughter silenced forever. Ethan's jaw tightened, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of raw grief. "Don't," he said, his voice sharp but brittle. "You don't know what you're talking about." Yet even as he spoke, his hands shook harder, the tremor a silent confession. Maya didn't flinch. "I know you keep his toy boat in your desk. I know you work until midnight to outrun the hurt. And I know something's wrong, something more than grief." Her words hung heavy, piercing the armor Ethan had built around his heart. For the first time, he saw her not as staff, but as someone who understood the weight he carried, the void Liam left behind. The moment shattered as Claire swept into the room, her heels clicking like a countdown. Her blonde bob gleamed, her eyes narrowing at the sight of Maya so close to Ethan. "What's this?" she demanded, her voice dripping with false concern. "The chef playing nurse now?" Maya rose, her calm unshaken, but Claire's presence crackled with menace. She'd been spreading rumors among the staff, painting Maya as a schemer angling for Ethan's favor, a distraction to keep her own poisonings unnoticed. "I was just delivering dinner, Mrs. Warwick," Maya said evenly, though her eyes caught the glass of water Claire set on Ethan's table, its faint sheen betraying the toxin within. Claire's smile was a blade. "You're overstepping, Maya. Ethan needs doctors, not kitchen remedies." She turned to Ethan, her hand brushing his arm with practiced tenderness. "Rest, darling. I'll make sure you're taken care of." Ethan nodded absently, his strength fading, but his gaze lingered on Maya as she retreated with the tray. Claire's words stung, but Maya's presence had stirred something in him, a spark of trust, fragile but undeniable. As Maya reached the door, Claire's voice followed, low and venomous. Stay out of what doesn't concern you, or you'll regret it. Maya paused, her hand on the knob, her heart racing, but her face serene. She didn't respond, but her mind cataloged every detail. Claire's too frequent visits, the water glass, the worsening of Ethan's symptoms after each one. Downstairs in the quiet of the kitchen, Maya stood by the sink, her fingers tracing the edge of a knife. Claire was dangerous, and Ethan was slipping away. Her grandmother's wisdom pulsed through her. When the body speaks and no one listens, it's up to you, Cher. Maya resolved to act, her intuition screaming that time was running out. The mansion's gilded walls hid a deadly game, and Maya Johnson was no longer just a chef. She was Ethan's only hope. The private medical suite in Ethan Warwick's Austin mansion was a battlefield of sterile precision and mounting dread, its sleek monitors casting a cold glow over the billionaire's trembling form. Ethan Warwick, at 35, lay gaunt against the white sheets, his blonde hair plastered to his forehead, his once vibrant green eyes clouded with pain. The neurotoxin Claire had slipped into his water for months was tightening its grip, each dose eroding his strength, inching him toward paralysis. 10 of the nation's top medical specialists crowded the room, their voices a tangle of urgency as they debated treatments for an illness they couldn't name. Outside, the Texas dawn painted the Colorado River in hues of amber, but inside, a storm was breaking. Ethan's body stiffened, his breath catching in a ragged gasp, and then he collapsed, his frame seizing violently on the marble floor as monitors shrieked in alarm. Get the specialists! Now! He's crashing! A doctor bellowed, his voice slicing through the chaos. The team surged forward, hands fumbling with syringes and defibrillator pads, their faces etched with panic. Dr. Helen Carter, the lead neurologist, barked orders, her silver hair catching the light as she checked Ethan's vitals. BP's dropping. Push epinephrine! But the monitors wailed on, their jagged lines mocking the doctor's expertise. Claire stood in the corner, her blonde bob immaculate, her lips curved in a mask of concern that hid a flicker of triumph. The neurotoxin was working faster now, her plan to claim Ethan's billions with her husband, Ryan, almost within reach. She clutched a glass of water, laced with another dose, ready to play the dutiful sister-in-law once the crisis passed. Downstairs in the mansion's gleaming kitchen, Maya Johnson froze mid-chop, the scent of fresh basil fading as a server's frantic shout reached her. Mr. Warwick's down again! Her heart lurched, not with panic, but with the steel-cold certainty her grandmother had called the knowing. At 28, Maya was a beacon of calm, her dark skin glowing under the kitchen's warm lights, her long black hair spilling in waves as she untied her apron. She'd smelled it before, the sharp chemical tang around Ethan, not just the soul sickness of grief, but the unmistakable mark of poison. Her grandmother's voice whispered, "Evil leaves a scent, Cher, bitter as betrayal." Maya grabbed a small vial of oil, peppermint and sage, a blend her grandmother swore could rouse a fading spirit, and sprinted toward the suite, her composure a shield against the chaos. Bursting through the door, Maya took in the scene. Ethan writhing, doctor scrambling, Claire's feigned worry, her dark eyes locked onto Ethan's face, his lips tinged blue, his body betraying the poison's relentless march. Without hesitation, she pushed through the crowd, her voice cutting through the din like a blade. "Move aside! Give him air!" The doctors froze, stunned by the chef's audacity. Dr. Carter scoffed, "You're not medical staff. Get out." But Maya knelt beside Ethan, her hands steady as she uncorked the vial. The sharp scent of peppermint filled the air as she dabbed the oil on his temples, her fingers tracing gentle arcs. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice low but fierce, "you're stronger than what's killing you. Fight it." Her words were a lifeline, piercing the fog of his pain. Claire's eyes narrowed, her grip tightening on the poison glass. "What are you doing?" she snapped, stepping forward. "You're not qualified to touch him." Maya didn't flinch, her calm unshaken even as Claire's venomous tone drew the doctor's attention. "I'm helping him breathe," Maya said, her voice even but laced with steel. She leaned closer to Ethan, catching the faint, acrid smell on his breath. Confirmation of her worst fears. The poison was no longer a suspicion, it was real, and Claire's presence screamed guilt. Ethan's seizures slowed, his chest rising with deeper breaths as the oil's sharp aroma seemed to anchor him. His eyes fluttered open, meeting Maya's with a mix of confusion and gratitude, a silent acknowledgement that she'd reached him where medicine had failed. Claire seized the moment, her voice rising with calculated outrage. "This is outrageous. She's endangering his life with her nonsense." She turned to the doctors, her face a portrait of concern. "She's been meddling, pushing her kitchen remedies on Ethan. She needs to be removed." The doctors hesitated, torn between protocol and the inexplicable fact that Ethan's condition was stabilizing. Dr. Carter, her brow furrowed, muttered, "This is highly irregular." But Maya held her ground, her dark eyes locking onto Claire's, a silent challenge. She saw the flicker of fear in Claire's gaze, the crack in her polished facade. Claire's hand twitched toward the glass, but Maya's stare stopped her cold. As Ethan's breathing steadied, the room grew quiet, the monitor's frantic beeps slowing to a steady rhythm. Maya rose, her hair brushing her shoulders, her composure a quiet defiance. "He needs rest, not more arguments," she said, addressing the doctors but aiming her words at Claire. She stepped back, her vial tucked into her pocket, but her mind raced. The poison's scent, Claire's too perfect timing, it all pointed to a truth no one else saw. Claire's face flushed with barely concealed fury, and she stormed out, her heels echoing like gunshots. Later in the kitchen, Maya found a note slipped under a tray. "Stay away, or you'll lose more than your job." It was unsigned, but Claire's malice was unmistakable. Maya's heart pounded, but her resolve hardened. Ethan was fighting for his life, and she was his only ally in a mansion steeped in betrayal. The sterile hum of Ethan Warwick's private medical suite in his Austin mansion was a cruel counterpoint to the storm raging within him. Propped against pillows, his blonde hair limp with sweat, the 35-year-old biotech titan looked like a man unmoored, his green eyes flickering with a mix of hope and dread. The neurotoxin Claire had been slipping into his water for months was tightening its chokehold, his legs now heavy with the first whispers of paralysis, his breaths labored. Yet for a fleeting moment, Maya Johnson's intervention had pierced the fog, her peppermint and sage oil, her steady voice pulling him back from the edge of yesterday's seizure. But now, as dawn bled through the mansion's glass walls, a darker poison took root. Doubt. Claire stood at his bedside, her blonde bob gleaming, her face a mask of concern as she handed him a manila folder that would shatter everything. Maya, 28, stood in the mansion's kitchen, her long black hair cascading in waves as she stirred a pot of chamomile-infused broth, her calm a stark contrast to the chaos upstairs. Her dark eyes, sharp with intuition, honed by her grandmother's folk wisdom, still burned with the memory of Ethan's gaze. Grateful, vulnerable, when she'd saved him. She'd urged him to face his grief over Liam, his adopted son lost 3 years ago, sensing that his body's collapse was tied to both heartache and something sinister. The acrid scent of poison clung to him, and Claire's too frequent visits, her carefully placed water glasses, screamed guilt. But Maya's resolve was tested as whispers spread among the staff, fueled by Claire's venom. The chef was overstepping, chasing Ethan's wealth. Maya's hands tightened on the ladle, her composure a shield against the growing isolation. Upstairs, Ethan's trembling fingers opened the folder Claire had given him, her voice smooth as silk but sharp with accusation. "I had to protect you, Ethan," she said, her eyes glinting with feigned worry. "This woman, Maya, she's not what she seems." The pages detailed Maya's past, fired from 3 jobs for inappropriate involvement with clients, arrested 2 years ago for trespassing at a hospital to see her dying mother. Her name changed from Maya Sullivan after a brief stint in county jail. Claire's words dripped like venom. "She's done this before, Ethan, worming her way into vulnerable families, offering her so-called remedies. She's after your money." Ethan's heart clenched, the folder shaking in his hands. Maya's warmth, her words about Liam, Had it all been a lie? The room spun, his legs numb beneath the sheets, the toxin's grip tightening as his trust crumbled. Why would she risk so much to help me? He rasped, his voice raw. Claire leaned closer, her hand brushing his arm, her touch cold despite its gentleness. Because you're a billionaire, Ethan. People like her see opportunity in your pain. Her words were a blade slicing through the fragile bond he'd felt with Maya. He remembered her kneeling beside him, her voice a lifeline. You're stronger than what's killing you. But now doubt poisoned that memory, as deadly as the toxin in his veins. Claire slipped another glass of water onto his table, its faint sheen unnoticed in his turmoil. Drink this, she urged. You need to stay strong. Downstairs, Maya sensed the shift before she saw it. A server returned with her broth untouched. Ethan's note missing. Her heart sank as she overheard the house manager discussing her inappropriate behavior with Claire's prodding. Determined, Maya carried a fresh tray to the suite, her hair loose, her calm a quiet defiance. She found Ethan alone, his face pale, the folder open on his lap. Mr. Warwick, she began, her voice steady. You didn't eat. I brought... He cut her off, his eyes cold, a stranger's gaze. Is it true, Maya? The trespassing? The name change? Were you using me? The words hit like a slap, but Maya stood tall, her composure unshaken. I changed my name to escape judgment for mistakes I made trying to help people. I was arrested because I wanted to say goodbye to my mother. But what I told you about Liam, about your grief, that was real. Ethan's jaw tightened, his hands trembling as he clutched the folder. You got too close, Maya, just like you did with those other families. I can't trust you. His voice broke, not with anger but with betrayal's raw ache. Maya's eyes burned with unshed tears, but her voice remained even. I saw a man dying, not a billionaire. I cared because you were hurting, not because of your money. Claire swept in, her timing impeccable, her smile a predator's grin. Enough, Maya. You're done here. She turned to Ethan. I've spoken to the house manager. She's out by morning. Maya's gaze met Ethan's one last time, searching for the spark she'd seen yesterday, but found only suspicion. As Maya left, her tray abandoned, Claire handed Ethan the glass, her triumph hidden behind concern. He drank, unaware of the toxin seeping deeper, his legs now useless, his heart racing with both poison and regret. Maya returned to the kitchen, her hands shaking for the first time, and began packing her knives. She'd lost her job, her place in the mansion, and something deeper, Ethan's trust. Claire's note from yesterday burned in her pocket. Stay away, or you'll lose more. As she stepped into the Austin night, the river's reflection shimmering, Maya vowed to find proof of Claire's betrayal. But for now, the mansion's walls held only heartbreak, and Ethan, alone in his suite, felt the poison tighten its grip, his body echoing the devastation of his shattered faith. The iron gates of Oakwood Cemetery stood sentinel under a gray Austin sky, their Gothic arches framing a sea of gravestones dusted with early December frost. Ethan Warwick, leaning heavily on a cane, shuffled along the winding path, his blonde hair catching the weak sunlight, his green eyes haunted but resolute. At 35, the billionaire was a shadow of his former self, his legs nearly useless from the neurotoxin Claire had slipped into his water for months, its slow poison masquerading as a mysterious illness. Yet today he'd discharged himself from his mansion's medical suite, driven by a truth he could no longer ignore. In his coat pocket, a small wooden boat, Liam's favorite toy, felt like an anchor, grounding him as he approached the grave of his adopted son, lost 3 years ago on Lake Travis. Ethan's breath hitched as he reached Section 12, where a modest granite headstone stood beneath a sprawling oak. Liam James Warwick, beloved son, June 10th, 2012, April 15th, 2022. A cluster of blue forget-me-nots, Liam's favorite, lay fresh at the base, their petals vivid against the frost. Ethan sank to his knees, the cane clattering to the ground, his hands trembling not from poison, but from a grief he'd buried too long. I'm here, buddy, he whispered, his voice raw. I'm sorry I stayed away. Tears carved paths down his face as he clutched the toy boat, memories of Liam's laughter flooding back. Sailing on the lake, building sandcastles, calling him dad. Maya's words echoed, "Your body's trying to tell you something?" She'd been right. His illness wasn't just poison. It was the weight of unacknowledged loss. Back at the mansion, Ethan had found a vial hidden in his suite's water pitcher, its contents confirmed by a trusted toxicologist. A rare neurotoxin, undetectable by standard tests, designed to mimic a wasting disease. Claire's visits, her insistent glasses of water. It all clicked. Claire, married to his feckless brother Ryan, had orchestrated a betrayal to seize his billions. Ethan's heart pounded with fury and shame. He doubted Maya, the one person who saw his pain, who'd risked everything to save him. Her dark eyes, her steady voice, her hair cascading like a midnight tide. They haunted him. He'd driven her away, believing Claire's lies, and now his body was paying the price, his legs failing as the toxin tightened its grip. Ethan returned to the mansion, his resolve steel. Claire was in the parlor sipping tea with Ryan, their laughter a mockery of his suffering. "Claire," Ethan said, his voice low but lethal, leaning on his cane. "We need to talk." Her smile faltered, her blonde bob catching the chandelier's light as she set down her cup. Ryan, slouched in a velvet chair, looked up, oblivious to the storm brewing. "What's this about?" Claire asked, her tone syrupy but her eyes sharp. Ethan tossed the vial onto the table, its glass glinting like an accusation. "Care to explain this?" Claire's face drained of color, but she recovered quickly, laughing. "What's that supposed to be? Some kind of prank?" Ethan's gaze didn't waver. "It's the poison you've been feeding me. The toxicologist confirmed it. You thought you could kill me and take everything." Ryan stammered, his face paling, but Claire's eyes flashed with defiance. "You're delusional, Ethan. The illness is messing with your head." But her voice cracked, and Ethan saw the truth in her panic. "The police are on their way," he said, his voice cold. "You're done." Claire lunged for the vial, but Ethan's cane blocked her, his strength fueled by rage. She stumbled back, her facade crumbling as sirens wailed in the distance. Ryan, spineless, fled the room, leaving Claire to face the consequences alone. Ethan didn't wait for the police. He drove to East Austin, his legs barely cooperating, to Maya's modest apartment. The building was weathered, its paint peeling, a stark contrast to his mansion's opulence. Maya answered the door, her long black hair loose, her dark eyes wary but soft. Boxes lined her living room, a plane ticket to Dallas on the counter. "Ethan," she said, her voice steady despite the hurt in her gaze, "what are you doing here?" He leaned against the doorframe, his cane trembling in his grip. "I was wrong, Maya. I believed Claire's lies, doubted you when you were the only one who saw me. I'm sorry." His voice broke, raw with regret. "I found the poison. Claire's been trying to kill me, but it was your words, your care, that kept me fighting." Maya's composure wavered, her hands clutching the door. "You thought I was a liar, Ethan. You saw that report and chose to believe I was after your money." Her voice trembled, but her eyes held firm. "I cared about you, not your wealth." Ethan pulled Liam's toy boat from his pocket, placing it in her hands. "This is all I have left of him. I'm trusting you with it, Maya, because I love you. Stay, please." Maya's fingers traced the boat, her heart warring between love and fear. She stepped back, her eyes glistening. "I need time, Ethan. You broke something in me." He nodded, his face etched with pain, and left the boat behind, a promise of his trust. As he drove away, the Austin skyline glowed against the dusk, and Ethan felt a flicker of hope despite the ache. Maya held the boat, her resolve shaking, knowing the man she loved was fighting for her, just as she'd fought for him. Christmas morning dawned over Austin, Texas, with a crisp clarity, the city blanketed in a rare dusting of snow that turned the streets into a glittering canvas. Maya Johnson stood in her modest East Austin apartment, surrounded by half-packed boxes, her long black hair spilling in waves over her shoulders. At 28, her dark eyes held a storm of emotions, love, hurt, and a fragile hope, as she clutched the small wooden boat Ethan Warwick had left her, a relic of his adopted son, Liam. Her plane ticket to Dallas lay on the counter, a symbol of escape from the heartbreak Ethan's doubt had caused. Yet the memory of his raw apology, his green eyes pleading for trust, lingered like the scent of her grandmother's herbs. A knock at the door jolted her, and there stood Ethan, his blonde hair flecked with snow, his cane steady despite the toxin's lingering weight in his legs. Ethan, 35, was no longer the invincible billionaire who'd built a biotech empire, but a man stripped bare by grief and betrayal. The neurotoxin Claire had slipped into his water for months had nearly stolen his life, masking itself as a mysterious illness that baffled 10 specialists. But Maya's intuition, her grandmother's wisdom, had seen through the poison, both chemical and emotional. Now Ethan's face was alight with determination, his hands steady as he held a small velvet box. "Maya," he said, his voice raw but resolute, "I chose fear once, and it nearly killed me. I'm choosing you now." He opened the box, revealing a ring with a blue sapphire, Liam's favorite color, catching the morning light like a captured star. Maya's breath caught, her heart warring between self-preservation and the love she couldn't deny. "I hurt you," Ethan continued, stepping closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "I believed Claire's lies, let her report tear us apart. But I know the truth now. You saw me, not my billions. You saved me, Maya, not just from poison, but from a life without love." His words cracked the walls she'd built, her fingers tightening around Liam's boat. Claire and Ryan, Ethan's feckless brother, had been arrested days ago, their plot exposed when Ethan turned the vial of neurotoxin over to the police. Claire's polished facade had crumbled under interrogation, her confession spilling out like venom. She'd poisoned Ethan to seize his fortune, with Ryan as her spineless accomplice. The mansion, once a cage of betrayal, was now a place of reckoning, its opulent walls bearing witness to justice. Maya's composure, her hallmark, wavered as she met Ethan's gaze. "You broke my trust, Ethan," she said, her voice steady but laced with pain. "I poured my heart into helping you, and you saw a schemer." She gestured to the boxes, the ticket. "I was ready to leave, to protect myself." Ethan knelt before her, snow melting in his hair, his vulnerability raw. "I'm not asking for forgiveness today, Maya. I'm asking for a chance to prove I'll never doubt you again. Stay. Build something with me. Something that honors Liam, that heals others the way you healed me." He slid the ring onto her finger, the sapphire gleaming like a promise. Maya's tears fell, not from sorrow but from the weight of a future she dared to imagine. She nodded, her voice a whisper. "Yes, Ethan, but we do this together, as equals." The room filled with warmth, the snow outside softening the edges of her small apartment. They embraced, his arms a haven, her hair brushing his cheek like a vow. Days later, they stood before Liam's grave at Oakwood Cemetery, the forget-me-nots vibrant against the snow. Ethan read from The Little Prince, Liam's favorite, his voice steady as Maya held his hand. Their wedding followed in May, under the same oak, blue flowers everywhere, a tribute to the boy who'd bound their hearts. The staff, once swayed by Claire's lies, now celebrated their union, their applause echoing through the cemetery's quiet hills. The Warwick Johnson Foundation opened its doors that December, a sleek building in downtown Austin where Ethan's biotech expertise merged with Maya's healing wisdom. Their first patient, a 9-year-old boy with symptoms no doctor could explain, reminded Maya of Ethan, grief masquerading as illness after losing his mother. Within weeks, combining medical care with her grandmother's remedies, the boy smiled again, his laughter a testament to their mission. Ethan's health had returned, the toxin's grip broken when he faced his grief and Claire's betrayal. His legs, once faltering, now carried him confidently beside Maya, their partnership a beacon for those lost in pain. As they stood on the foundation's balcony, the Austin skyline glittering below, Ethan pulled Maya close. "You taught me love is stronger than poison," he said, his lips brushing her forehead. She smiled, her hair catching the breeze. "And you taught me it's worth fighting for." Somewhere in the rustle of oak leaves at Liam's grave, they felt his presence, a quiet blessing on their new beginning. The city stretched before them, alive with possibility, as two hearts, once broken, chose to heal. Together. As Ethan and Maya's love triumphed over poison and pain, their story reminds us that healing begins where trust and heart collide, What moved you most? Their redemption, Liam's enduring legacy, or the courage to choose love over fear? Share your thoughts below and let us know where you're watching from. City lights or quiet nights? Your support fuels these tales of hope, so hit subscribe and join us for the next journey. Thank you for staying until the end. We can't wait to meet you again in a story that will stir your soul. Until then, keep believing in love's power.